Yeah, microphone. Good evening and welcome to today's meeting of the West Berkshire Council Governance Committee. I'm Councillor Eric Pattenden. I will be chairing the meeting. Today's meeting has been held both over Zoom and with councillors present in the room. In addition to myself, the other members of the committee in attendance are Councillor Jeremy Cottam, Billy Drummond, Chris Reed, Stephanie Stevenson, Howard Wollaston. Anybody else?
David Marsh. He's there.
David Marsh on Zoom, although I don't see that at the moment. And we're also joined by Councillor Cottingham. We also have Parish Council representatives on the committee. Councillor David Southgate. Parish councillors are independent members and permitted to speak at the meeting, but they're not permitted to vote on the items. Joseph Holmes, Shannon Coleman-Slaughter and Julie Gillespie are the officers who will be advising the meeting. Ben Ryan is in attendance as the clerk to the meeting and Thomas Radburn as the Zoom host. If we hear the evacuation alarm this evening, we must leave the building immediately. Please proceed via the safe emergency exit route, which will be shown to us by the trained officers present. Please follow any instructions given by the trained officers present. The assembly point is the car park of the Dolphin Pub. So firstly, item 1, apologies. And Clerk, have we received any apologies?
Yes, we've received apologies from councillors Laura Coyle, Dominic Bowick, Owen Jeffrey with Stephanie Stevenson as substitute, and independent member Simon Carey.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes. Are members willing to accept minutes of the previous meetings as a true and accurate record? If so, proposer, Councillor Wollaston. Seconder, Councillor Billy Drummond. And these are for the meetings of the minutes of the special meeting held on the 29th of January. Members, can you indicate by raising your hand if you agree that the minutes can be signed as a true and accurate record? And any abstentions? Thank you. So the minutes of the meeting held on 29th January 2024 have been approved, true and accurate record. No amendments to wording. Thank you. Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Clerk, have we had any declarations?
We have not had any to date.
Thank you. And from the floor? Thank you. Item 4, forward plan. Officers and members, any amendments or comments to the forward plan? No? Okay, thank you. Forward plan to be noted, so no vote required. Item 5, internal audit update report, quarter 3, 2023 to 24. And Julie, I wonder whether you'd like to introduce. Thank you.
Good evening. This report is to update committee on the status of internal audit work as at the end of quarter 3 for 23-24. The main highlights and key messages are in paragraph 4.4, where it mentions there were no audits completed during the period that were given less than a reasonable assurance opinion. And there was also no unsatisfactory follow-up reviews completed during the period. And 4.5, so there's no significant issues of concern that we've identified during the period that we need to notify a committee of. So the key messages of the report: There then goes on to appendices, which identifies the work completed on Appendix A for the period. Appendix B is work in progress and the status as at the end of December. And Appendix C is the specific anti-fraud work plan update with progress. So it's whether members have got any queries on the content.
Thank you. Members, any questions or comments? Councillor Reid.
In Appendix B, you talk about the anti-fraud work plan, and there's a comment about it being a time-consuming exercise that is ongoing. Is there any sort of technology, tooling, AI that could relieve some of that effort burden?
Sorry, on the NFI, is it, did you say?
Yes, I think it was on the NFI work.
It's a national fraud initiative. There's a database, it's data matching, and it's a national database. So we haven't an awful lot of, and we get the reports with all the matches, then we have to review them.
Okay.
So it needs a manual intervention or a personal intervention to assess what is the information telling you.
All right, you just have to get your head down and do
go
it.
through it.
Oh, okay.
But some of it's data quality issues, some of it we just need to delve a bit further and what is it telling us. But no, it needs a person to actually review it to see what it's telling us.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. Any other comments? Okay, we need a proposer and seconder to approve the recommendation set out on page 77 of the report. Apologies, moved on to the next item already. Okay. So, yes, as a recommendation set out on page 11 is to note the report, no need to vote. Item 6, financial year end 2023 to 24 year-end planning document. And Shannon, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. This is our standard year-end planning report. It asks members to approve the standard accounting policies we apply to the production of the accounts on an annual basis. I would draw members' attentions to 2.2 of the report that notes that we have 2 years currently where the accounts are unaudited. So we have open accounts and we are rolling draft balances into the 23-24 close. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Members, any questions?
Yes, if I may, Chairman. Is this the right point to discuss that the government is changing the rules and maybe ignoring these outstanding years that have not been completed? Or is
We can discuss that now. That also leads into the next report on the agenda, which may be a better time to discuss it as our external auditor is present.
Okay, he is.
On Zoom.
Where?
Okay, we can.
Sophia.
Ah, right. Okay, thank you. Yes, I'll leave it to the next item then.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Williston.
I was going to raise the same issue, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cottingham.
Thank you, Chair. So, as you know, I'm portfolio holder for finance. We're currently in the year-end cycle of producing 23-24 accounts. It is a matter of real concern that we haven't had full audited accounts for the last 2 years. The fact that we haven't got that assurance that the balance sheet is 100% valid and been independently tested. As we're well aware, UK GAAP, general accepted accounting principles, are based upon principles. So the principles which are interpreted by Joseph, Shannon, Melanie and the team as such They do their best endeavours to comply with those. However, in some ways, it is a bit like marking your own homework. Yeah, that you have an audit to have that independence, to have that assurance, that quality. And it is a great concern that we have an organisation who bidded to do the audit, Grant Thornton, but haven't complied with their contract. They haven't done what they promised to do. And as an authority, we are in the position to protect council taxpayers' money, assurance. So one track I would like to have assurance of that Grant Thornton are not overbilling us for work which they haven't done in relation to the non-audits which they've completed. So it's really, really important that us as authority, we hold them to account. I do feel it is, how do I put it, grossly not very professional of Grant Thornton to bid for work but then not complete it, but to do the easier pieces of work across the country and leave us as a unitary authority with this potential exposure. So it's not very satisfactory. In fact, it's probably the strongest words I would use as an accountant to say that I would not qualify them as being an auditor.
Okay, thanks so much, Councillor Cottingham. I think we would all wholeheartedly agree with your assessment.
Well,
Sure, Councillor.
Chairman, it comes to the point is, are we paying a retainer for this organisation? And we're not having the work done. Therefore, if we do, we should be requiring the retainer back. If the job has not been completed, I, as a businessman, would not expect to be paying for this. I go further, which I was going to leave to the next item, but I understand there's a potential that they're going to withdraw from looking after our accounts, which I just find incredible. I won't go beyond what Councillor Cottingham has said. We're in committee meeting, and to say I am disappointed is a huge understatement.
Okay, noted. Thank you. We'll come to that under the next item, I think. Councillor Marsh.
Well, maybe it's for the next item, Chair, but I was about to add to what's been said. If they're thinking of withdrawing, why don't we get somebody else who can do the job? That's it. That's all.
Okay, thanks so much. And I think that is something that's probably already in process. Councillor Reid.
Just moving on 5.6, it's got proposals. One minor proposal is made as part of the report relating to revenue prepayments. I was just wondering, 5k to 10k is quite a big step. If we can just have a bit more colour around why there is that big step.
Yes. We have basically brought the limit in line with all the other limits that apply. They apply on capital and revenue regarding accruals and any sort of capital receipts treatment. So it's the minimum de minimis level that we use to treat things. We have increased it in line to take into account of inflation as well. So we have a standard 10k limit across the organisation and its expenditure.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more comments on item 6, bearing in mind that we know there's going to be more comments in item 7, we do need a proposer and seconder to approve the recommendation set out on page 77 of this report. Anybody, Councillor Wollaston, and a seconder, Councillor Drummond. And I ask whether members vote by raising their hand on the recommendations. Thank you. It's carried. So we move to item 7, which is the External Auditor's Interim Annual Report. Financial years 21-22 and 22-23. Shannon, wonder if you could introduce it for us. Thank you.
Yes, this is the report produced by our external auditor Grant Thorntons in relation to value for money. They have combined the assessment for 2 financial years. Our external auditor is present to field and respond to any questions. One significant recommendation has been made with regard to sort of long-term financial sustainability, and I will hand over to Sophia at this point.
Thank you, Shannon. Members, I will go through the auditor's annual report and then at the end pick up the comments that have already been raised around the audits of the 2 years of financial statements that are outstanding. So I shall take the report as read. As Shannon said, the report covers 2 financial years, 21-22 and 22-23. Starting on page 49 of the pack, you can see here a RAG rating of how we have assessed the council's value for money arrangements from 2021 to the current report. And the area of governance has remained stable, but the position for both financial sustainability and the 3 E's has worsened. One thing to bear in mind is that the report, as mentioned, covers both financial years, but as the 23-24 budget was set in 22-23, we do review and comment on the council's financial position for 23-24. So for financial sustainability in 22-23, you will see we have identified a significant weakness. And I did go through this with the committee in through the formal letter that I wrote to your chief executive at the meeting in January. More detail on each of the criteria areas is included over the page. There is a key recommendation in relation to the significant weakness that we identified, and that's set out on page 59 of the papers, for continuous monitoring of the financial position and impact of spending controls, making sure to consider all possible options to stabilise and improve the council's financial position. We have made a number of improvement recommendations. The one for financial sustainability is the widening of an improvement recommendation made in our 2021 report. And for governance, there is a new improvement recommendation around updating the constitution with 2 2021 improvement recommendations that still apply. Then for the 3 E's, we have 1 improvement recommendation around reporting of waivers to members. Now, on page 70 of the pack of the papers, I have commented on the latest position with the audit of the council's financial statements. I have been in contact with Joseph on this since we stopped the 21-22 audit in April last year. We had planned to recommence the audit in July, but the work needed to update valuations for over 100 assets wasn't complete at that time for us to pick up and continue. A continued dialogue with Joseph in the autumn, outlining at that point my view when the first discussions around the backstop were coming in, that it wouldn't be possible to complete the 2 audits remaining in the available time given, because we'd only got halfway through the 21-22 audit at that time. And I was also working under my firm's guidance that we would need to complete all outstanding work by the end of March. And there simply wouldn't be enough time to complete 1.5 audits. This was based on experience of prior year audits with the council, the number of errors that we'd reported in prior years, and also pace of the audit process. And there were also resource constraints on my side. So because we didn't pick up the audit again in July, I was constrained as to what resource I could put to this audit following that period. I'll pick up now, there are a couple of comments or questions around the fees that have been paid to us. So there will be a refund process for any fees that have been paid, but for work that we haven't completed. I do believe that process will be managed by PSAA, but there is every intention of returning any fees paid over to us for work that we have not completed. I will stop there. I'm sure you have lots of questions or comments.
Thank you, Sophia. I know that we do have lots of questions and comments. Opening up, who'd like to go first? Councillor Cotton.
Simple question, why? Why are you abandoning the council?
It's not my intention to abandon the council. I had to take a risk-based analysis on how much work was still remaining for the 21-22 and 22-23 financial years, and whether or not I would, myself and my team would be able to get that done in time. There is a risk, or there would have been a risk, that if we carried out work and we weren't able to finish, we would possibly be in the same situation as well.
Joseph.
Yes, I suppose it's just to add that it's the government's intent that is consulted around this disclaimer opinion approach. So there's going to be a whole range of councils up and down the country who are going to have some form of disclaimed opinion because their auditors, as sort of Sophia's articulated, are saying we can't complete the audit within this timescale that the government have consulted on. They're not responded to their consultation yet, so we don't know what the outcome of that will be, but it is likely that us, along with most of the other Berkshire councils and many councils up and down the country, will have this set of disclaimed opinions that will be for our next external auditors, will be KPMG for the 23-24 financial year, to then pick up what's happened in those disclaimed opinions and probably do some more extra work in 23-24. But that is the government's approach, is that there will be these disclaimed opinions at a sort of backstop date of probably early autumn, so it seems to be sort of October time. But as every week goes on and we've not had a response back, that deadline, I imagine, may well slip. I think, you know, for the committee, I think it's going to take a long time before we get back to the old system of the council producing its accounts and then the external auditors coming along by September time. And just, I suppose, for context, I said last year we were one of 30% of councils to produce our accounts on time for 22-23. So we do them by the 31st of May. That's our target per the last report. Yeah, for 23-24, they are never going to be done by the end of September. That is just not going to happen. I dare say it's going to take many months afterwards, depending on when we get a disclaimer from Grant Thornton, once they know from the government what the timescales are. My feeling is this is going to take 2 or 3 years for the audit firms to readjust back to us producing our accounts by a certain date and external auditors having another date as part of that.
So what we're saying is the whole system has collapsed and is in a complete, utter mess. And we're running blind through one of the most difficult financial periods that we have ever seen. And I suppose the word that really worries me is probably they will take it up. And it totally leaves us unprotected. Why have we left it so long before we are told that they cannot, I don't have to use the word, failed in attempt into actually doing our accounts? And why weren't we advised this earlier? If this was so badly wrong, and why couldn't they put more resources into it? If you bid on a contract, in far as my experience is, you know what the risks and what you need to do to complete it. And we're being told, oh, no, well, we've changed our mind because it's too much, too hard work. And I do hope somewhere in the Financial Times that this is discussed, because I find this, not for me, but for them, embarrassing, really. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm conscious of the fact that the vast majority of councils across the UK have the same issue, but we did raise this last year, from my recollection, and said we were very unhappy about it and it needed to be sorted out. I would like some reassurance that KPMG will be able to, but a much larger firm will have the resources to be able to solve this problem going forward.
Thank you. Noted. Councillor Cottingham.
So Councillor Williston, I'm going to say nice to meet you, Sophia, for the first time. I have actually had a meeting with KPMG about 3-4 months ago where I actually went through my own concerns of the opening position, not least the integrity and the completeness of the balance sheet. That is really, really key, that we have assurance that there's nothing hiding in the balance sheet. We have made the correct provisions in there. We have, as I say, which likelihood is that at year end, we'll have about 7-8 days worth of reserves. As Councillor Cottam alluded to, this is probably one of the most critical parts of the councillors' financial integrity as a going concern. And we just don't have that assurance. It's disgraceful. And I can't believe, as I say, an organisation of the turnover and the resources of Grant Thornton haven't been able to even do a light touch audit of the balance sheet. That is really, really key. If the balance sheet is correct, the P&L revenue statement by definition is valid, correct? And that assurance is not there. And you can tell by my voice, I'm very, very unhappy. And as I say, just to say it's happening, across other councils across the country, it's not an excuse. The system is broken. And what's happened is competitive tendering's come in and the audit firms have underbid, haven't got the resource, haven't been able to deliver. And any other commercial organisation would pay penalties and fines and be held to account. This is a disgrace.
Councillor Stevenson, thank you.
I'm actually very concerned how this reflects upon us as a council. And I know we've just said, and we've heard Councillor Cottingham say that this is across the country, but we still, as West Berkshire Council, will be labelled as being inefficient or open to mismanagement or anything else. And this worries me a great deal. And I remember Joseph saying in a previous meeting that the government were already some months ago considering why the system wasn't working, because there's a limited number of people or companies allowed to do these audits. So why aren't there more companies allowed to do the audit so that they can catch up with the backlog and get us out of what is an extremely embarrassing situation?
Thank you. Joseph, you want to respond?
Yeah, no, so thank you. So yes, at the moment, I think it's about 9 organisations who can undertake the external audit of local government. I don't think that is part of the government's thinking for this is the solution to move things. Though I totally get your point, but I don't think that the government have, but certainly not in their consultation, have included that as an option. I think your point is really important on the disclaimer point, because there will be a large number of councils who are kind of in our position where we will have these disclaimer opinions for 1, 2, or for some councils more than 2 years. So I think it's really important for us to look at the wording, and I'm sure Sophia might want to talk about this. I'm sure there'll be some sort of national wording for like a no-fault disclaimer, because as the Section 151 officer, I have to sign things off with other agencies like Homes England, for example, to say that we as a council have not had a qualified set of accounts. And there's that risk that if we don't have some sort of no-fault disclaimer, that I won't be able to sign that off. And that would mean then potentially the council not being able to access certain funding streams or other pieces. So that's a really important point to make, and a really important thing for the sector. That of course there will be councils out there who the audit firms will still be working on and may well want to genuinely disclaim their accounts, but that wording is really crucial for us, and absolutely, as you say, for the public as well, to articulate this is the reason why.
Thank you. Mr. Southgate, would you like to come in?
Good evening. Just to understand in terms of the governance and risk that the council is running with as a consequence of not having these accounts done, what actually is the position that we are looking at for West Berkshire Should we not get them done at any point in the future? Or actually we end up with a third year of the accounts not being done? Because I've sat in this meeting for at least 2 cycles where this issue has come up, been raised and not actually resolved. So it does give me a concern that we seem to be kicking the can down the road and not necessarily grasping the nettle and coming out with some solution that actually sorts it. And clearly, if our current provider can't do it and others can't do it, then what is our plan? Because otherwise, I can see us getting to a third year where the same issue comes up and the same responses are given, which doesn't seem to me to be good governance by our council.
Thank you. Joseph, do you want
Yeah, just to quickly respond to that. So I picked it up a little bit earlier on. So yeah, 21, 22, 22, 23, highly likely to be disclaimed. And the longer that we have to wait until this response comes back from central government and we know what this disclaimer looks like, the greater the risk that for 23, 24, that opinion is going to be much later than the 30th of September deadline. So I think even now there's a very high risk that it could be into the new calendar year when we've had a final set of accounts for 23, 24, which will have 21, 22 and 22, 23 wrapped up. And I think as Shannon mentions in her paper, the one before, that the last bit of assurance that we've got is 31st of March 21, and we could be into the 2025 calendar year with still no further assurance. I would really, really important for me that we have some assurance when we run into you as members voting on next year's budgets, the 25-26 budget, that we've at least caught back up through to 23-24, so that you've got some assurance over those figures.
Absolutely. Howard, sorry, Councillor Wollaston, and then we'll let Sophia come back in for a while and maybe answer some of those points. I think there might be some more after that as well. Thank you.
Just recollecting again on what happened this time last year, I think we agreed that, or we were told that West Berkshire Council was actually ahead of the game compared to most councils. We'd actually delivered in terms of our audit, and it was just the external audit that was the problem. Am I correct in that?
So yeah, on the meeting deadline side of things, so yeah, I signed off our accounts by the 31st of May deadline, and I think the analysis was there's about a third, 30% to a third of councils did that. Yeah, it's far higher the number of external audits that were not completed in
I just want to get across the fact that we're not the bad boys here. We're actually ahead of the game, but it's still not acceptable, clearly.
Noted. Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. So, Sophia, just a couple of points. We feel this leaves us in a difficult position, and we're not at all happy about it, as you may have gathered. It's unacceptable, really, for us to have disclaimed accounts. We also don't understand why you haven't offered a light touch audit. So interested to know your comments on those points and other things that have been raised by members here today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So just to pick up on the points that you've mentioned there, I completely understand your position. It's not somewhere that I would like to leave the council in as I transition off and you move to KPMG as your new auditors. It's not any comfort, I think, but for context around the country, the current stats on audits, 22-23 audits that have been complete, it's still only sitting at 25% around the country. No comfort or consolation to you, but just for context, I think. In terms of why have we not done a light touch audit, we are not permitted to do a light touch audit under the regulations. We have to do a full audit, and this is what is the problem and why we're not able to complete as much work as we would like to. There is no scaling down the work that we need to do on the balance sheet, on the INE. We have to do a full audit that's in line with the SIPFA code and that is in line with how we need to audit per our regulators. And as you probably know, over the years, we've had to do more and more work. So that is not an option. Otherwise, it would have been something we would have wanted to explore, but we can't. That's not open to us. As Joseph was saying, the disclaimer for 21, 22 and 22, 23 would make it clear that it's a no-fault disclaimer. So it's not a disclaimer under auditing standards. We're not saying that we haven't been able to get assurance over your accounts. It's a disclaimer under statute. So it will be government imposed. And we await to see what the template wording for that looks like, but it would be very clear that it's a no-fault disclaimer. And in terms of the comments just now around the council having its draft financial statements up to date, that is correct. And there are councils around the country where they are in a position similar or maybe worse than West Berkshire, where they haven't got their draft financial statements up to date. So I think just for context there as well. So that is good performance from the finance team side.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cottingham.
Hi, Sophia. Thank you for that. So I'm just picking up on the point on the fact that the impact on the council from an operating perspective of not having accounts which have been fully audited, which are in this sort of hiatus of being waiting to be this disclaimed or whatever the wording is. Any other commercial organisation wishing to engage with West Berkshire Council will do their due diligence. They will be working out what is the credit risk of dealing with West Berkshire. So they would be putting onto their pricing a payment risk analysis to say, what is the chance of me definitely getting paid for this contract? If we do go into a capitalisation or section 114, there is a potential risk that we are not able to fulfil those contracts. So to say that there is no impact on the running costs of West Berkshire is incorrect. We're looking to attract talent. If you want to look at West Berkshire and see they haven't had accounts signed off, how do you know you've got a long-term career? There are so many other reasons why we need to have fully audited accounts. And as I say, Joseph and his team, they've worked bloody hard to hit these deadlines. And on a basic human level, it's very rude that the fact that Grant Thornton have not had the courtesy of being able to find the time to actually do the audit. It is, as I say, going back to the original point, a really, really disgraceful state of affairs. So what I would like to know, Sophia, is you've generated a value for money interim audit report. How much time did you spend on site visiting West Berkshire? How many meetings did you have with officers to produce this report? Because what you're telling me is you haven't had the time or resource to do an audit. How can you have had the time and resource to visit people at West Berkshire officers to test the actual controls? You're probably well aware that we have the financial review panel every Thursday. And what, from your own opinion, what benefit has the financial review panel been to the integrity as a going concern of West Berkshire Council, please?
So in terms of the value for money work, yes, we have completed that. We have a separate team that does this work. They are not auditors, they're value for money specialists. So we have a separate team that has the resource to be able to do this work. I would have to go back to see how many meetings were held and how much time was spent on site and spent to complete this report. But it is separate to the audit side, separate to the financial statement side. Do you mind just repeating your final question? Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
So part of what was introduced within 8 weeks is that we have the financial review panel every Thursday, where we've been endeavouring to reduce the potential overspend, which was relayed to us. So we have, as officers and members, we've been looking at various bits of expenditure, not least agency spend over £2,000, which went up to £3,000 for budgets which were overspend. So I'm just really interested to get your take on how much that's delivered as a assurance that West Berkshire Council is a going concern and that we won't be having to have a capitalisation directive or a 114. So again, it's just really, as I say, from a partnership perspective, I would have expected our external auditors to be well averse over the internal control environment and what's been happening to make sure, in essence, we don't go bankrupt.
So as part of our value for money report, the auditor's annual report, we have covered what you have in place now, since can't remember exactly the time when it was implemented, but since it was implemented for the spending controls, this financial review panel, we have covered that in the auditor's annual report. We've also looked at how the budget gap that was identified has closed and the effectiveness of the spending controls. So that is covered in the report, and we do note that the council's overspend has been brought to a much reduced level as to what it was flagged back in, I think it was Q2, to around this almost 7 million mark.
Thank you.
Councillor Cottingham.
Thank you very much. I'm going to your report and looking at page 59, key recommendations. You've pointed out, I believe, if I understand correctly, that we actually have you said we have one of the lowest reserves and the highest debt ratio in the country. Is that correct? From my understanding of the report? It's page 2023, your page 59 on your report.
Page 13 for that.
Page 13. Okay.
Yes, I do believe that's correct. And we've checked all of the information in the report with Joseph to make sure it is accurate. Joseph did come back to us on a couple of things that we have updated since his review, but yes.
And you're suggesting that we divest ourselves of basically a commercial property to go some way to address this?
No, that we're not suggesting anything. I think we're just pointing out what the situation is.
Strange. Hold on a second.
Joseph, you want to make a comment there?
Yeah, so just sort of related to that. So and it reflects the report that I wrote to.
Yeah, it says here, options under current discussion include divestment from capital assets and negative equity values, etc. So that comes under the recommendations.
Yes, so I suppose on the recommendation side of things, they're saying for us to, GT are recognising that we're proposing to do that and to have as that as I think that's the intent of their recommendation, is they recognise that we're doing that. And
maybe I'm just a bit simple-minded because
that.
I read this as a recommendation and it states there, options under current discussion includes the divestment from capital assets and negative equity values. It will be important that any exit strategy adopted by the council is supported by professional advice. So they're not, okay, I'll go slightly towards you. It's not saying we shouldn't do this. It's saying that we need to be careful as we do this, if that's correct. Okay, I just wanted to make clarification on that. Thank you.
And just a point around low level reserve. So absolutely, as it's highlighted here, it's the same information that I included in the full council papers a couple of months ago, highlighting we have compared to others very low level of reserves. The point on debt that is made is not necessarily that we have high levels of debt compared to other authorities. It's our ratio between our assets and debt. And I would say to an extent on that, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because from my point of view, I wouldn't want to have, say, really low levels of debt compared to high levels of assets, because that could imply that we're borrowing short term all of the time rather than actually fixing out some of our debt. So there's and I spoke to GT about that. There is a trade there between how much debt you fix out versus what level of short term borrowing you're undertaking.
Councillor Stevenson.
Well, unless, Ian, do you want to come back?
Yeah,
on
I
this?
will.
Because I'm going on to something else.
Yeah, the debt is obviously regarding optimising the gearing element of that. So the weighted average cost of our borrowing as a council is roughly 3.5%. So at the moment, our strategy is to borrow short term, because obviously Public Works Loan Board is roughly 5.5%. As soon as it narrows down to that 3.5%, we will get back into the long-term market. Also, the capital receipts, which we were receiving from the divesting of the commercial property portfolio, will go into substituting the need to have short-term borrowing from Public Works Loan Board. But as Joseph said, the fact that there is an optimised level of gearing for us as a council regarding interest rate cover and things like that is that we do need to have borrowing to make sure that we are providing the assets, the infrastructure for the residents of West Berkshire. To have no borrowing is probably not the right thing. To have too much borrowing is obviously we don't want to be in the likes of Thurrock and Birmingham and other places, which I think are working out over £3,000 to £4,000 of borrowing per head. I think we're roughly about £1,000 per head, just over £1,000. But yeah, it's all about our ability to pay back the interest and the MRP and getting that optimisation as a strategy.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, I just want to raise pages 63 and 64 of this report. I had no idea that we would go into the nitty-gritty of how often children in care are visited, for instance, but we have red markers in way too many boxes there. And I just want to pick out something on page 64, which says Grant Thornton Insights data note that spend on street cleaning was very high compared to peers. They're getting down to really nitty-gritty recommendations here about our street cleaning and how we use our money. So I want to know, this report needs to be line by line acted upon, doesn't it? And I take it we as the governance committee, being responsible, we want to know how these red boxes are going to be moved back into green, don't we? Or do we? I mean, is this what I'm supposed to be doing, sitting here in governance, or who else is doing it and acting upon these comments, please?
Joseph, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, very good point around that governance process. So there's sort of two parts to that. So one is obviously, as the external auditors come along, they then bring back previous recommendations to say where we might have kilter on certain spend, like street cleansing. What is the council doing about it? So yeah, that's absolutely right. That is your challenge. You know, what are we doing about this? Are we happy that that level of spend is quite a bit above average? Is that a purposeful policy decision that the council has made? To then where these are monitored, so every quarter, the Executive and the Scrutiny Commission see all of the indicators that make up. So Grant Thornton just honed in on the red indicators. You know, all of the wider set aren't there, but the Executive and the Scrutiny Commission are looking every single quarter at those indicators that Grant Thornton have then picked up. So that's kind of like for scrutiny to hold the Executive to account, and the Executive to hold itself to account as well around the performance that Grant Thornton are highlighting here. I suppose the importance of of the value for money work that Grant Thornton do is for you as a committee to determine, when the next report comes through, and myself and other colleagues acted on that. And if we still haven't, then that's totally up to you about what you want to do about calling others to account and explaining why an indicator might still be red after X months or X years from what the external auditors bring up.
Joseph, can I ask a question then related to that? Where, is obviously these red blocks go up to 22, 23. With KPMG coming on board as auditors, will they, and if not, can we ask them to incorporate this in their value for money assessment so that we then have a longer term view of how that's changed?
Yeah, so I think, I suppose to Ben, as an action from this, you make sure that Shannon and myself include that ask KPMG to include it as part of their work, because they might have, you know, they still have to work to the same guidelines that Grant Thornton do around the value for money work and the sort of code that is there, but they might take a slightly different spin. So we'll, you know, from this committee, we'll make sure that those continue to be included.
Thank you. Councillor Cotton.
Yeah, I was basically a question for Grant Thornton. You use the red and the amber, and I suppose there's probably a green there somewhere, but we don't even see it. What's the position that you trigger a red and an amber and green? So how is this, I mean, is this not obviously not, it's a little bit, it's got to be a little bit subjective, but I mean, is there a figure that you can give that is the threshold from going from getting them to red to amber to green? It's, for example, I'm seeing that at the last bottom box, it goes to amber when there's like about 0.6% of a improvement. Maybe we can ask Grant Thornton to explain that.
Joseph, you want to come in there first?
So Grant Thornton, they're picking, these are where we as the council have said we are red, amber, green. So they're just reflecting back. So
fine.
Yeah, where
so we will be using the same.
Yes. Yeah. So as the reports that sort of Catalin and Mr. Bogger sort of brings through, we use a sort of consistent methodology for what red, amber, green is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Cottingham.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So just picking up on what Councillor Stevenson was alluding to regarding the financial efficiency, effectiveness of West Berkshire councils from a value money perspective. And we shouldn't forget we are dealing with public money, with the custodians. And one of the things which we're very, very keen to really push forward as an administration is this concept of financial efficiency. And what financial efficiency is all about is ensuring that you're delivering fit for purpose public services at the lowest unit cost. So you can have instances where services are delivered which we know are too costly, and you can have other services which you know are not fit for purpose because there's not sufficient amount of investment into those. We're well aware that the fact that we deliver 700 services. So as a council, it is always quite tricky, the art of being able to make sure you have the appropriate level of investment to deliver services which we're proud of across the organisation. It's a very complicated, complex ecosystem which the council runs, coming from a commercial organisation where it was just making telephone calls. Coming to West Berkshire has been a certain amount of baptism of fire to really get your head around what we do. So, as I say, one of the things which we've been looking at moving forward is this concept of benchmarking through activity-based costing. And what I mean by activity-based costing is that each individual service will have a unit cost of being able to understand where do we stand with regard to benchmarking across the entirety of local authorities, being able to learn best practice from those local authorities. I do believe that there is government information which allows that. So it's understanding why a particular service has a unit cost of X, and then understand how that local authority is delivering. So we are getting best value as a local authority, but also identifying where we have outliers and where we're actually doing things rather well and be able to share that with other local authorities. So, as I say, it is something which Joseph and I have been discussing, the team is looking at, and there's a way forward. I think this will give us reassurance. I'm not advocating we have 700 KPIs because that would be definitely death by overkill, but it's understanding that about 60% of our spend is in adult social care and children and family services, identifying those key areas where we can see we are potentially have the ability to produce and deliver services at a lower unit cost, but also maintaining those services which we feel proud to have as residents, but also as members and officers of West Berkshire Council.
Thank you. That's a point well made, Councillor Cottingham. Any further comments? Councillor Drummond.
Yeah, can I ask on page 67, improvement recommendations, is in summary findings, there were 20 waivers in 21-22 and 23 waivers in 22-23. These were not reported to the Governance Committee. Can I ask why not?
Joseph, yeah.
Yeah, so these are procurement waivers. So we don't report on procurement to Governance Committee. It's not part of its terms of reference. However, off the back of this, we do have at the moment it's biannual, but it's moving to quarterly procurement and contracts reports. Off the back of this recommendation, I'm including the number of waivers in future reports which go through to the executive.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any more comments? I think I'd just like to summarise for the benefit of Grant Thornton what we've been discussing here. We find the position that you've put us in unacceptable, having disclaimed accounts, and we think it's no reflection on the performance of the finance team, the council, or the administration. And I think we will be considering writing to you in future to express our dissatisfaction with that. Can we take that as an action, please, Ben? Thank you. As the recommendation set out, page 43 of this is to note the report only. We don't need to vote on this item, but we're now going to move to item 8, the SIPFA Financial Management Code. And ask Joseph to introduce this report.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So SIPFA have what they call a financial management code, and you have the ability to complete self-assessment against that. You have to buy the code and do so, but it's certainly highlighted through SIPFA as best practice that we should. They've revamped the code in recent years, and so we undertook a self-assessment. I had a look against the sort of 13 themes that SIPFA put in there, and met with colleagues as well from an officer side of things to see where we thought we complied more or less with SIPFA's code, and the summary is in here. So if you look in the report in 5.6, that sets out where we think we're kind of like more green or more amber, and I hope it reflects much of what's already come through to the committee already. So I kind of didn't think that I could turn around and say everything was green from a level of reserves financial resilience side of things. That would not be consistent with the information that we have in front of us. So I've sort of tried to highlight that, and then this will be used by KPMG to help inform part of their value for money work. So I hope they find that useful as a sort of snapshot self-assessment for them to get cracking with.
Okay, thanks very much. Members, any comments there? Councillor Reid.
You spoke about the financial resilience assessment on page 87. Has the authority undertaken a financial resilience assessment? You said not an external one, but internally. Is that to help save costs? Is it an open index that's quite easy to follow? Or
yeah, so and some of the information actually which Grant Thornton shared is SIPFA have got quite a good financial resilience summary. So not necessarily a toolkit, but a summary across a range of indicators on reserves, debt, our exposure on sort of social care costs, council tax and business rates, a variety of measures. And that's quite helpful because it gives a snapshot as to where we think we are, is more or less positive. But there are we can look at commissioning an external review. So the LGA or SIPFA will do sort of like a deep dive finance review. So that is something we'll look at. Obviously, we've just had the LGA peer review. So there's only a certain amount of probably external reviews that you want to have at any one time because they can just end up saying a similar thing. But certainly that is something that we will look at in the coming months. Is it worth getting someone in to have that sort of external review? Now, of course, SIPFA will say that's a really good thing to have because SIPFA also produce, will fulfill that function. Yeah, that is always something that we look at. It might be quite a good thing to do in that we have kind of an LGA peer review every 4 years. So it might be good to have one of the, maybe a finance specific one in the middle of that 4-year period to give us some insight we can work with.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Can I just conclude by saying I feel heartened by listening to Councillor Cottingham and to Joseph. Really do. Thank you for that. But I don't know if Councillor Cotham's question was answered. Are we going to be in the same position with KPMG? Have we any guarantees that we won't be?
I suppose going back, that previous one. I think KPMG are due. I think they're going to start looking at doing their audit of us in sort of November time. Their statutory deadline is to complete the audit by the 30th September. So to that point, they are not going to meet their deadline. However, they can only start once the accounts have been disclaimed, and that is not something in our Grant Thornton or KPMG's control at the moment. So we have to wait for this government consultation to be responded to by the government, for the government then to set out, this is when the backstop date will be. As Sophia was saying, there's then got to be this disclaimer opinion agreed. And only from then, from when can Grant Thornton actually disclaim the accounts, can KPMG then get started on their work. So my suspicion is this is something which the external auditors are probably have 2 or 3 years of not meeting their deadlines.
Councillor Williston.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's about 2 years ago, there was an independent survey of all I think it was English and Welsh councils, which I think was 403 from memory, which put West Berkshire Council as 8th most robust financially. If you had to take a guess, where will we lie these days?
So thank you, Councillor. I think that was a return where an organisation was looking at different measures. So it wasn't just about financial resilience, to be fair. So they were looking at wider value for money measures. But if you just look at our reserves position, we have some of the lowest reserves of similar unitary authorities in the country. So from a resilience point of view, compared to other authorities' level of general funds, or general fund at the moment is just over £7 million, there's only a very small handful between us and those authorities who have gone for exceptional financial support. So from a resilience point of view, we have
that same survey,
resilience.
That same survey put West Berkshire Council as the #1 in terms of cost of board services delivery.
I'm just looking at financial resilience. So
okay.
from that.
I mean, I'm sorry, I just wonder, how concerned should we be?
I think from a financial resilience point of view, we should be concerned. So I'm not going to sit here and say it's all looking rosy, because it isn't. When the budget was set, it was set with a forecast level of reserves that was going to be below the minimum level that I set out. We are absolutely not alone in being a council that is facing real financial difficulties. I think when I look, nearly a quarter of spend by councils who are unitary councils is in a council which is either in exceptional financial support or has set a Section 114 notice in place. So there's a lot of financial stress out there, and we have very low levels of reserves.
Sorry, can I just add a further question? Where would you be more comfortable with as a reserve level?
So the question actually came up when the Scrutiny Commission were looking at things. So the minimum I say at the moment is £7 million. As our budget goes up, that figure, I would like that to grow to £8-9 million, and for us to have some service risk reserves on top. So we used to have some. So it would be probably more around the sort of £12 to £15 million mark would be a much more comfortable position, which is sort of twice where we are currently.
Thank you.
Councillor Cottingham.
So as someone who's had a career in finance, worked in internal audit, being used to be the recipient of self-assessment returns from operating companies across the world, I can speak with the fact that humans tend to be very optimistic in the way in which they mark themselves. So there is a place to have self-assessment, but they are self-assessment. They are an indicator of where you feel things are. I liken it very much to having your own annual MOT for your car. So you may think your car is working perfectly correct. You've tested the brakes, you've looked at the lights, you've checked the oil. However, until you've taken it to the MOT testing centre, you don't really know whether it's going to pass or fail. So again, all boils back down to we have corporate governance, we have company law, we have the role of external auditors. They're there to do a job to provide independent assurance that the internal control environment is there, fit for purpose, value for money, financial resilience. So yes, I don't doubt the integrity of Joseph and his team. However, until we do have this independent assessment given to us, we are slightly in the dark. And as I say, we've done this, and no doubt Julie's had an input into the process of doing the self-assessment as well, to do some testing. But as I say, until we have that view from whether it's Grant Thornton or KPMG, again, we are hoping that everything's okay. But hope, we all know, has a tendency to sometimes not deliver.
Thank you. Councillor Williston.
On the basis of that, and I assume when KPMG were appointed, that there were KPIs for them to address. And they promised, I assume, that they will get on top of this within the next couple of years.
Joseph.
So yes, so alongside nearly every other local authority, we signed up to, as Sophia mentioned it earlier, the PSAA, the Public Sector Audit Appointments Organisation, as part of the Local Government Association. So they run the procurements on the behalf of local authorities for nearly every single local authority. And yeah, part of their remit is that they sign up to, yes, we are going to complete this on time. Certainly so far, KPMG have been very engaged and wanting to understand the organisation. Their audit fee, compared to Grant Thornton's, has increased by over 100%. Yeah, when they bring their report through, I think Shannon's put it on the forward plan for the next meeting. There is a cost to that, which is perhaps more reflective of the cost to external audit of doing their work. But that, again, that's part of your remit as those charged with governance, to hold KPMG to account as well when they come through. And the first meeting of that will be when they bring through their audit plan for the year ahead.
So one further thing, I mean, it's the old story, is that you pay peanuts and you get the results. But are there penalties on them if they don't deliver in time?
I would have to ask PSAA if that was the case.
I think we ought to know.
Yeah, on how their contract with them is.
Thank you. Yeah, can we take that as an action and then to report back? Any other comments, members? Okay. Well, as the recommendation set out page 75 is to note this report only, no need to vote on this item. So to close, all business now concluded. Thank you very much to all present for your contributions, for attending the meeting. Next meeting scheduled for the 16th of July, 2024. Thanks very much. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Eric.